Hey, welcome team sellmorevirtually.com. We have a special treat. You just listened to Ken Trupke's first segment, and we're going to, what I know of him from the day I met him, he was a master at business org development. And because here at Sell More Virtually, we have been going through organizational charts, business structures, why not get an expert to get some input? So, Ken, because you've done this, the org chart, the different silos, would you speak into that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that there's two key concepts when you think about building your team and building out your organization. And the first is you want to start with what, not who. And the second one is you want to get the right people in the right seats. So let's start with that first one, the what before the who. So what you want to do is build out your org chart functionally in terms of what tasks, what roles do you need filled? What things do you need done? Forget about who you have. One big mistake people make, and it's easy to do because it's just kind of natural to say, well, these are the guys I have. What should I have them do? But it's a mistake to do that because then you start creating roles around people. And then one, it just doesn't work as well. And two, if they leave, now you've got this kind of weird gap that was this custom role for that person. So a much better approach, start with the roles that you need and just build out that org chart. And then every box gets a name. Now you might put multiple or a name in multiple boxes. If you're a team of 3, you might still have a full executive leader, a sales leader, a finance leader, an operations leader, an engineering leader, marketing leader, but people might be wearing more than one hat.
Right.
So don't just make one box and go exec/sales/marketing. Have separate boxes and put the same name in all the boxes. That way, as you grow, you've already got the structure that you need. You just need to now put a new name in there. When that role grows enough to the point that, or your business grows enough that you can afford and it makes sense to put a dedicated person in that box, well, then a new name goes in there and your name comes out. So start with what before you worry about who. Now, once you've got that built out, now you want to take that list of teammates and who you have available and start putting them into the spots. And you want to make sure that these are good fits. And that's where we get to that right seat on the bus, that the right person in the right seat, because you want to make sure that it fits their skill set. It fits their desire. People actually have to want to do that role. You can say, I'm really good with numbers, but I don't want to be the accountant. I hate accounting. Well, just because they're good at it doesn't make them want to do it.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure that there's a good fit there from a desire standpoint, as well as the capability standpoint. And so take who you have and put them in the boxes. Now, what you're going to find is two things. You're going to have some boxes with no names. And that's where you're going to have to, people, you don't have anybody to fit that box. Now you have to figure out, do I need to hire somebody, or is somebody going to wear 2 hats in the interim? Because all those roles still need to be fulfilled, just not necessarily with the team you have. So that's one problem is boxes without names. And then unfortunately, it's pretty common that over here, you've got some names without a box, and that's okay. What that says is that person was probably a good fit for the organization in a previous version, but in this version where we are today, there's just not a good fit. And so you can work with that person to say, listen, the way the organization works today, there's not a box. You have a conversation. Maybe you're missing something, or maybe they'd like to try something or whatever, but likely they're just not a fit. And now you just need to be generous and help them move on to their next job, and make sure that you're generous with the separation plan and the separation timing, and that, you help them go be a good fit somewhere else. And that feels harsh sometimes, but it's actually such a blessing for everybody. Obviously, it works for your organization because now you have the right people in the right spots, but it actually is to the benefit of that person as well. Because if you're doing a job where you don't really want to, or you're not really qualified, you're probably not very happy. And so let's find you that role at another company where you can really thrive, where you can be happy doing something you like doing. And I've had so many people over the years come back who maybe weren't that happy with that first conversation of, hey, there's not a spot for you, but come back later and say, that was the best thing that ever happened. I went off to this other company and I found my spot and I found my role and I've been thriving ever since. Or I went somewhere and that wasn't quite right, but I went to a third place and that's where I really landed and have planted myself and it's been great. And had I not left, because I wasn't going to leave on my own, had you not said, listen, there's not a spot for you, I wouldn't have left and I would have continued to be unhappy. Right. And instead, now I'm very happy and I'm thriving. And so it does work out in the end. And frankly, whether you get that feedback from people or everybody ends up with a happily ever after or not, you've got to do what's right for your business. And what's right for the business is figuring out what roles you need and getting the right people filling those roles.
So I want you to take off your hat of interim CEO or whatever, but you also do consulting. Okay. Now you're a consultant to a company and the owner says, but Bob's a great guy.
Yeah.
All right. And I put him in that position because of his potential. What do you do in that situation?
Well, you hopefully have built up a strong enough relationship with that CEO and establish the ground rules that you're going to be frank and candid. And so what I would say to him is, listen, I totally appreciate that. What we need to do here is separate the personal from the professional. I like Bob too. I'd be really hard pressed to come up with a person, even in my entire business history, that I didn't like. That I like genuinely wish they weren't around. I wish they didn't work here because I don't like them. It's so rarely about liking them as a person. So the point isn't that Bob's not a great guy and that we don't like him. Of course, Bob's a great guy and we like him, but that doesn't mean he's a good fit for the role. And potential is okay if we're willing to suffer a lower level of effectiveness in the meantime. Maybe we don't have a better alternative and maybe Bob's a good enough fit for now. We just need to realize that, well, we better put some benchmarks and some milestones in place to make sure Bob's progressing and we're realizing that potential and that he's growing into that position, or else we need to be actively looking to fill that role and just leave Bob there as an interim. But we can't just say, well, Bob's a nice guy and he's got a lot of potential, so let's find a home for him. That's just not good business. And that said, I've seen owners do that. And I understand why. Maybe they've got a personal connection. Maybe he's a family friend and it would just be too painful to do something else. So they carve out a role. And as the business owner, listen, that's your call. You've got that discretion. You can do that. Just understand that you're sub-optimizing, that's not the most you can get out of the business, but maybe that's a trade-off you want to make. So as a consultant, I'm not there to judge. I'm there to advise. And so I'm just going to make it really clear. Listen, you can do that. Here are the trade-offs by doing that. Here's what you're losing. Here's the opportunity cost by putting someone who's got potential in the role instead of someone who's capable in the role. Do what makes sense to you, but just understand what you're choosing. And don't think that there's not a trade-off by doing that, because there totally is. But yeah, in the end, these are ownership decisions. And sometimes that's what makes it tough to be a consultant, because you can advise, but you don't necessarily have the control. And so that's sometimes what's a little bit more fun and effective about being an interim or a fractional executive, is those decisions then become yours. And so, and frankly, you don't have those emotional attachments because you're new to the company. And so you can make a little bit more clear-eyed decision. So,
and you become the heavy, right?
Yeah. Which frankly is a good role for an outsider as well. You don't necessarily want to be to force the people who are going to have to continue to work together. See, whether I'm fractional for a period of time or an interim for a period of time or an advisor, however you look at it, I'm only going to be around for probably a maximum of 4 years. Right. And so, usually 6 months to 2 years is more typical. So you're not going to have to live with me forever. And I'm not going to have to live with, hard feelings. And so to set people up to continue their relationships long-term, it can be a win. And that's not to say that I don't have friends that have been clients for years. I certainly do, as I know you do. And so you build long-term relationships, but not every relationship has to be long-term. And so to come in and make some tough decisions and kind of be the quote bad guy, that can be really helpful to a company, and people appreciate you taking on that responsibility and that role. But when I do it, I just know that, it's for the good of the company, and I don't have to be here forever. You know, they're going to be here forever. So I need to set them up for relationship success, that they can continue to feel good about working together long term. And if they need to feel bad about something, well, they can just look back and go, yeah, that was when Ken was here and he did that. And, you know, that felt really bad, but we're past that now. And, you know, all those kind of things. So yeah, it's helpful to be able to divert some of that negativity.
In my situation, a lot of times, because a lot of my focus is in sales, I see a lot of people that are in the wrong seat.
Oh, yeah. Sales is a huge place, a very common place.
A lot of times that's a dumping ground. Hey, just put Bob in sales. Hey, put Jim in sales, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always faced with, so what I've done is created metrics and created kind of non-negotiables. And so when I sit down with the owner, I say, my recommendation is that you evaluate them on these metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, and yesterday in this conference, I had everybody say in unison and I got this from you, Ken, at here, and they had to name their company. We do things this way.
This way. There you go.
And they burst out laughing, but they all then got very serious. And then I had them all yell out, so what if they don't?
What if they don't?
Do you have an answer? And so what I like about your methodology, which is what I believe in, is you first, if I'm getting this correctly, you first formulate what that position needs to do, and then fill it with the people that are ready, willing, and able.
Absolutely. Yep. That's 100% it. In short, that's the short version of it. Yeah. And those questions are critical that you were just asking. The what if they don't? What if they don't? You got to know. And what are you willing to tolerate? Because you're going to get whatever you tolerate. I just had a conversation with a young leader the other day whose team, they do remote events. And so he sends people out to the, you know, like booths at an expo kind of thing. And they were calling in going, hey, it's really dead. You know, what do you think about we should just pack up and go home because there's nobody here. And that happened a couple times in a row where they were calling him during the show, calling him to say, I think we should pack up during the show and go home. And he got frustrated. He said, yeah, the problem is I don't really have, these people aren't that good at this job and they don't like doing it. And they're just looking for kind of an excuse to get out of it. But I don't really have other people. I said, listen, here's the hard truth. You've got to decide what you're willing to tolerate. If you're willing to tolerate people calling you and wanting to bail early out of the show, well, they're going to keep calling because you're going to have trained them that if they want to get out of the show, they just call you and tell you it's dead and you'll let them come home. Right. So you got to decide. Now, I get it. You don't have people to backfill, but you know, you got to ask yourself, what's more difficult? Not being able to staff a show because I don't have the team, or staffing the show with people who are going to quit halfway through the show. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but you need to face that hard truth and really have in your head clearly what you're willing to tolerate, because you're going to get what you're willing to tolerate. Absolutely. And it kind of ties into your other question, the what if they don't? So what if they don't perform? And what are you going to do?
Hold that, because we're going to keep this going in interview number 3. I got some more fastballs for you.
All right.
But hey, sellmorevirtually.com. This is Ken Trupke. Don't forget to get on that podcast of his, okay? We gave all the information in the show notes. And hey, let's move over to interview number 3.